Are you ready for a show that talks sports from the fans' point of view?
We've seen Michael Jordan score 37 points a game in his era. How many could he score in today's NBA?
There's not a player out there who I'd rather have than LeBron James.
Are you ready for a show that isn't afraid to challenge anyone when it comes to sports? If Adam Silver really wanted to fix tanking in the NBA, he would stop rewarding teams by giving them the best chance to win the draft lottery.
I mean, how many times will Roger Goodell drop the ball on handling domestic violence in the NFL?
Look, athletes have every right to talk politics, but if the fans stop tuning in, that's their right.
Then you're ready for Talk Back, a podcast where two fans debate the media narrative and discuss the world of sports as we see it.
Welcome to the show.
It's time for another edition of Talk Back. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Nesbit, and with me as always is Justin Gay, your host and director of content with a full lineup of NFL, NBA, and NASCAR wrap-up. I'm not sure we can get any more exciting than what happened on Monday Night Football this past week. Then as we move through the NFL, we certainly need to discuss the fact that the NFC East is crumbling. Not only did the Redskins lose their quarterback, but the Eagles are a complete mess. Is there another team now that's in control in the NFC East? As we move into segment 2, NBA is providing a little bit more drama for us to talk about, whether it's the Wizards down in Washington, whether it's the situation in Philadelphia with Markelle Fultz. There's a lot to be discussed when it comes to the hardwood. And then we'll finish this week's show with the NASCAR Championship wrap-up. Yes, the title was decided on Sunday night and it was final, but the outcome might have been a little bit different than what we all expected. All of that and more on episode 226 of Talk Back.
We are back, and let's jump right into the Week 11 NFL action, and we have to start with what went down on Monday night in L.A., the game of the year. And if you listen to talk radio, maybe the game of the century. I don't know if we can go that far, but what a matchup we saw go down between the Chiefs and the Rams. 54-51, the third most points scored in an NFL game. It was an electric game to watch. It just felt like it didn't stop. And Eric, selfishly, I wanted the Chiefs to go down and kick a field goal so it would keep going just to see how many points these guys could continue to rack up even in overtime. But basically a game of Madden broke out, it felt like, on Monday night, something we used to do back in college, see how many points we could rack up in a game. It's tough not to be prisoners of the moment, but I got to ask you, was this the best regular season NFL game you've ever seen?
At least in my lifetime, I can't remember another game that caught my attention that much. And the thing I really liked about it was that I'm not necessarily rooting for one or the other in this moment, because I'm not a Rams fan and I'm not a Chiefs fan. I don't root against either of those teams. I know you might as far as the Chiefs go because they're interdivisional rivals in the AFC West with your Denver Broncos. But aside from that, we're just watching a Monday Night Football game that, like you said, was absolutely electrifying. Two young quarterback stars, one of them in his third year, who has clearly turned the corner and opened the eyes of many who really now understand that Jeff Fisher is probably the worst head coach in NFL history in terms of quarterback development. Now all that is behind Jared Goff. He looks amazing out there. Then you've got on the other side, second-year quarterback, really first-year starter in Patrick Mahomes, who also looks flat-out phenomenal. He made a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that were forced, but those two teams put on an absolute show. I love your comment about Madden because we'd have Doritos and Oreos all over the place. We're throwing controllers at the television. Meanwhile, we're battling it out between the Bengals and the Seahawks or whoever because we would always do that random team selection thing. So that was a good memory. Thank you for bringing that back to me, although I lost most of those matches if I recall. So in any case, it was an absolute shootout. I'm right there with you. I wanted to see a field goal at the end of this game too so that we had some overtime action. You can start to break it down for us as far as what the differences were, what the reactions are, why the Rams won, all of those things and how it plays into the season for both of these teams. But outside of this moment, I don't think it has a lot of impact on their seasons other than the fact that the Rams gained a little bit more advantage in that race for the home field advantage, but the Chiefs didn't lose that much ground since the Patriots had a loss recently here too. I just looked at it as I'm not a fan of either team. I can just look at the television all night long with open eyes and just root and root and root for as many points as they want to score. I loved it.
You start to think about what the Chiefs did. They had 5 turnovers in this game and still scored 51 points. It just felt like the defenses said, okay, we're either going to get a sack or a turnover or we're going to give up points. Neither team was very impressive in coverage defensively. The offense is just absolutely shredded. The defense is just going up and down the field, and outside either strip sack fumbles or interceptions, the defenses really did nothing in this game. So I don't think that you can look at the Chiefs and really feel like they lost any ground or it changed your opinion of them, because when they can go on the road in the situation they did, where a week ago they thought they were going to Mexico City and then all that got scrapped and now they're going to LA, and you have all the things that are happening in Los Angeles, and then you have a Chiefs team that's going to be traveling to a different spot, figuring out hotels and security and all these different elements that go into a game like that, and they still went on and put on a show. Now, I will ask you this, though. During the broadcast, they brought up the amount of passes that Mahomes had thrown in the fourth quarter, actually being behind. It was in the low 20s at that point, and then Mahomes had a chance with 3 timeouts. He had the ball at midfield, and it just felt like he made a very poor decision to try to throw that ball in the coverage, gets picked off. They get another chance. He just made some ill-advised throws. It felt like they went back to the Andy Reid, Alex Smith offense where he's dinking and dunking across the middle with 50 seconds on the clock and only 1 timeout. But Eric, are you concerned at all what you saw with Mahomes with some of the pocket presence where he got 2 strip sack fumbles and then he threw 3 really bad interceptions in this game versus a defense that had already given up 44 points to the Kansas City offense? Remember, Kansas City had the 1 touchdown that went in there, but to give up the picks that he threw and some of the mistakes he made just holding the football too long, is there any concerns you have with that going forward? Because you know, as this team gets into the playoffs and plays teams like New England or Pittsburgh that have very good offenses, you can't turn the ball over 5 times in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And to be honest, yes, I am concerned about that. I think these are very teachable moments for a guy like Patrick Mahomes because I feel like he is willing to learn. I don't feel like he's one of those guys that's just all attitude and will say, yeah, well, I made 5 mistakes. So what? So be it. I think he's willing to learn from these things. And I agree with you. Both of the fumbles were just kind of in bad spots that you can't lose the ball there. You've got to protect the football more. Even if you're going to take the sack, you've just got to take it and live to fight another down. Same thing with the interceptions. I mean, some of those throws were so bad that you just can't do it. I mean, you can't even risk it with the coverage that they had for the Rams in those situations. So I didn't like any of the turnovers for Mahomes. Then he goes and has 6 touchdown passes as well. So it's really the yin and the yang for his evening as far as the good and the bad. But yes, those 5 turnovers were really tough to see, and I thought they were really unnecessary. So it depends on if there become teachable moments that he's going to learn from and make a difference the next time he plays, or if those things are repeated time and time again. I think with a guy like Mahomes, I think this game was just really all about the moment. I mean, it was a gunslinger mentality, so you were going to see some mistakes like that. The only thing I'm really concerned about is that they've had 2 shootouts now like this, one against the Patriots, which they lost by 3, and now one against the Rams, which they've lost by 3. So when you go out and put 40 points up with the Patriots, you put 51 points up with the Rams, and you're coming out on the losing end, you've just got to find a way to reduce the turnovers and be the one that's up by 3 instead of down by 3. Because when you get to playoff football, you don't get another week. It's one and done. So that's, to me, what the biggest concern is regarding the question you asked about these turnovers is, yes, you get into the playoffs, and if you repeat that type of thing, you're done the next week. You're going home. Whereas right now, it's okay, we can learn from it. We go on to play next week. In the playoffs, it's different.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to look at this as a teachable moment for him. And you even saw late in that game, they actually came around. You could see him protect the ball with both hands, knowing that sort of that clock had run out, that the pressure was going to be there. He didn't have anybody open, and he immediately went and protected the football before the sack came. So you could see those type of things happen. Getting some of these 2-minute drives where the pressure's on, he's going to have to make those drives at some point in the playoffs. They can't just go through and blow everybody out and be up double digits in the fourth quarter. We even talked about that with Alabama, that at some point Tua is going to need to take snaps in the fourth quarter, that these guys need that kind of late game action to get acclimated to the situation. But what a fantastic game. And I thought Sean McVay, really up until the last drive that the Rams had really called a good game, but he got very, very aggressive. He kept his foot on the gas late in that game, obviously trying to get that first down to not give the Chiefs the ball back. But there was some really questionable plays that he had there in that last drive that one almost turned into an interception. The incompletion, he let Kansas City escape with about a minute on the clock and a timeout. Did you have any issues with McVay's play calling, or did you like that he kept the foot on the gas even late?
No, I don't even think he kept his foot on the gas, though. That's the problem with the play calling that he had. Even the one that almost got intercepted, I believe it was on second down, that was a play out in the flat. I mean, that if that ball does get caught, it's a pick six. It's game over going the other way. So I didn't like his play calling because, for one, that is an incomplete pass that stops the clock. So there's, a timeout that the Chiefs save. Also didn't like it for the fact that you have Todd Gurley, the best runner in the NFL, and you've got 3 downs. So the Chiefs have 3 timeouts. You run Todd Gurley 3 times. At the very least, if you don't get first down, they've got to burn all 3 of those timeouts. You're giving them the ball back with maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds to go, depending on how the punt goes. Instead, they have a couple of bad plays. They have an incomplete pass that almost gets intercepted. They're punting the ball back with almost a minute left. Now, Tyreek Hill wasted some of that time by coming out of the end zone, which, look, I know he's a lightning rod and can change a game, but in that particular spot, I wished he hadn't come out of the end zone because the field position and the time on the clock was actually more important than whether or not he could gain a big 40-yard run. So, that aside, to your point, no. I texted you and I said, wow, Sean McVay might actually be writing the first story of our podcast right now. We have a great game for 59 minutes, and then Sean McVay almost play calls his way right out of a win. So luckily for him, that didn't happen, but I thought it was going to, because I thought, well, Patrick Mahomes, you never know. Given the last possession, he could do something. Unfortunately, there was, again, another bad turnover.
Well, we've seen McVay be aggressive all year. He had the play call in Seattle where he was pretty deep in his own territory late in that game, went for it on 4th and 1, got the first down and ended the game. It felt like he just did not want to give the ball back up to that Chiefs offense because they had struggled so much to stop them throughout the game. But ultimately, they were able to get 2 late picks and hold on for the win. So, Rick, let's keep it on Sean McVay because I'm not sure how many people follow Redskins football, but that's where Sean McVay came from. He was the offensive coordinator in Washington, and under his tutelage in Washington was Kirk Cousins. Well, Cousins left. He took that big monster, fully guaranteed 3-year deal from the Minnesota Vikings. Expectations were high, but Minnesota has been sputtering this year, and they sputtered in primetime, which is never good, and it brings up a lot of questions, not just from Viking fans, but football pundits and people like us that talk about this kind of stuff on a weekly basis. But the Vikings now find themselves at 5-4. One of the questions we had in the preview show was, could Kirk Cousins match what Case Keenum did last year? Well, he's already got 1 more loss and a tie that Keenum didn't have, as he only had 3 losses all of 2017, 2018. So, Eric, this Vikings team, they've fought some injuries with Dalvin Cook. They've got some issues on the offensive line. But how much of the Vikings struggles do you put on Cousins' shoulders?
Well, when you pay a quarterback that much, your expectations through 10 games are a lot better than 5-4-1. I can tell you that right now. I really do blame a lot of this on Kirk Cousins because if you watch him play, you just don't see a quarterback that's worth that kind of money. You see a mid-level quarterback. You and I talked about this prior to him going to Minnesota when we said, well, what has he really delivered for the Redskins? He's a name. He seems to be a name, but at what point does that name not mean as much as a Brady or a Rodgers or a Breeze? Because he's definitely not in that category. I'm worried for the Vikings that this was a huge, colossal waste of money.
Warwick, I was following your thread on Twitter that I was in the mentions of, and there was a Vikings fan talking about this situation and kind of blame the line and blame the play calling. This offensive line wasn't good last year with Case Keenum. He was the 3rd most pressured quarterback in the league. Dalvin Cook only played 4 games last year. He wasn't there. This defense isn't as good as it was last year. I don't think they're controlling games, and they aren't making things as easy on the offense. But Kirk Cousins has Dalvin Cook healthy. The Vikings